I just want to invest in people that really want to be the best that they can be. Hello, everyone. This is Todd Screamer. Welcome to another episode of Be Your Best series. And I want to welcome a friend of mine, Jonas Rosenberg. We work together in my mortgage company. He's a good friend of mine. I have him on here for this great subject. It's a subject that I am passionate about, and that'll probably be evident as we go through this. And that is this whole idea of fear versus love. And I'll give you some context to this, and then Jonas, I'm going to give some of the content, and then Jonas is going to help with some of the questions and kind of his experience as well as my experiences around this subject. I grew up pretty much my entire life in fear, and that may sound odd to say because people will look at someone like me and they might say, "Todd, you're super confident. Like you must not have any fear." To this day, I was talking to someone last week and I said, he said, somehow we're talking about a similar subject. And he says, well, I said, do you think I ever have fear? He says, Todd, I don't think you have any fear. And I said, yeah, I have a healthy dose of fear. I no longer live in fear, but there are things that come up every single day that are fearful or promote those kind of feelings. What I'm going to talk about is a little bit about my journey, some tactics, some of Jonas's journey around this. Just so you know, I didn't prep Jonas and say, hey, ask these questions or whatever. We're just trying to be authentic men about how we feel about this subject and talk about it. So here's the premise. The premise is there's two basic emotions. If you really want to boil them all down, one is on the love side and one is on the fear side. So when you think about this, fear would be feelings like of anxiety, depression, anger, worry, stress. Those are some common ones, but anything negative, think of that as fear. Love is things like appreciation, passion, tenderness, willingness to help others, things like this. So think of a loving feeling when you're holding a baby, like a newborn, and just that overwhelming, whether it's your baby or someone else's, that overwhelming feeling of love and appreciation and wonder for what this little baby is going to become and how they're going to grow up and what they're going to be. Those are loving feelings. So that's the premise of what we're talking about. I think this is a big statement, but I think this fear mentality is a pandemic in itself, and it's super widespread. And I don't think people talk about it enough, and I don't think they focus on it enough. So with that said, Jonas, I'll start with a big question. Thank you for helping me out. My question is, what has been like a reoccurring fear that you've had as an adult in your life?
Todd, first of all, I want to thank you so much for asking me to join you. I've been looking forward to this since you asked. I think about this all the time, Todd. I feel, and sometimes I'm even motivated by the fear, I feel like I'm going to let people down. My wife, my kid, you. There's a great driver for me to not let people down. So I just keep going, and I'm super afraid of that.
Yeah, fear of letting people down. I've had that. I'll tell you a quick story. And again, I like to be real on these things because I think it's what being the idea of transparency is part of communication. And I don't say these things for any other reason than to realize we're all human and we're all dealing with things. So I was going to therapy starting almost 6 years ago. The first year was about my divorce and going through that and understanding what I did wrong and what was my part. But then about the next year, I ended up delving into this. I had the therapist tell me, he said, Todd, you're very smart and you do a lot of things right, but you have a lot of anxiety in your life. And I looked at her and I said, well, I just thought I was driven. And she says, no, that's a form of fear. And that's where this journey really started for me, as far as recognition that I had a problem, and Jonas, I'm one of these people where my typical morning would be, I'm early riser, bounce out of bed, immediately thinking about all the things that I got to do and the texts I got to return and what's the market doing? And gosh, I got to get to work. And what am I going to say at my first meeting? And all of this like anxious feelings. And a lot of people, that is a form of fear. And that's most common. I have a lot of issues, but that's the most common one for me. And so I kind of been on this 4-year journey to try and understand that and also diminish it, right, in a healthy way. And that's what we're going to talk about. I tell people sometimes some of my things delve into the world of psychology. Now, I'm not a professional therapist, neither is Jonas. We're just two guys trying to get by life and trying to figure stuff out. But if I wouldn't have been in a business person, I probably would have been more of a psychologist because I think it's fascinating, like getting to know someone and why they are how they are and how they were raised and what was mom and dad like and why did you choose the choices that you've made in your life. And I'm amazed by all that stuff, but it led me, of all those things, I think this to me is some of the most interesting things. So, you know, when I was coaching professional business owners and people in business, I learned a lot of things. So my job in that company that I had was mainly helping people to increase their income and increase their wealth through savings and investing. And I found out a few things. First of all, any kind of coaching helps. So my answer is most people have a healthy dose of this in their life. I truly believe that coaching, whether that's a therapist, whether it's a mentorship, someone maybe who is really good at this and that you meet with on a regular basis, reading books, I think those are great things. Like any skill can be developed. And that's so this is one of the best skills. Diminishing fear in our lives is one of the best skills that we can develop. The other thing is, in that company, what I realized is I would help people double, triple, quadruple their incomes. And sometimes I was started to ask them, is your happiness higher? And we had in most of these relationships, they were very transparent and they would think about it and they would say, no. I said, so let me get this straight. You're one of the top 0.1% of income earners in the world, and you're not happier. So the premise was that would make me happier, right? That making that income would make me happier, but it didn't. So now what I realize is that happiness is how you look at the world and how you interpret your own feelings. So if you wake up in the day, like I woke up this morning, this is no joke, and I woke up happy like I normally do, and I grab a cup of coffee. I go to what I call my dream room. I'm walking to my little dream room, which is where I do my gratitude journal and all that. And I just stopped and I opened the door and looked outside my front door, and the sun's coming up and it's beautiful. Like it's stunningly beautiful. And that's me interpreting the world as beautiful, right? I truly had a 20-second moment of, wow, I get to live this life. You know, I get to see the sunrise. I get to see the beautiful trees. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. That's why sometimes you can see people and they're very, not financially wealthy, but they're very happy people. I remember I took a trip with my brother to Thailand about 6 years ago, and I was amazed at how happy people were. Now, the average person in Thailand roughly makes about $300 a month. I say that again, $300 a month in US dollars. So they're not running around rich. They're not driving BMWs. That's not what's creating that. It's a different culture. It's a different way of thinking about life. So we talked about what fear is. We talked about what love is. Let me ask you, Jonas, this question, because and this is for the listeners as well. So answer this question. Out of 10 days that you wake up, how often do you wake up and feel excited and passionate about the day without a lot of fear and anxiety behind it?
About 2 out of 10.
2 out of 10.
Yes, sir. It takes me probably about 20 minutes, a half hour of my alone time and my gratitude time to get where I'm probably 8 out of 10, but about 2 out of 10 right out of bed. I start worrying.
Now, listen, I know Jonas a little bit. I know he's got great kids. I know that he is happily married. I know that he's got a very successful career. Why?
Anxiety, whether it's a loan, whether it's an issue going on at the house, whether it's a family illness issue, whatever it is, for some reason I wake up worrying, and it takes me to get my mindset so I can go and be the happy, spunky person you know.
Yeah. Well, and you are, you do bring a lot of joy to people. So as you get to know Jonas, he's one of these, like if I ever want to feel pumped up or feel good, I'll call Jonas. Like he's top 10 people I would call and say, I just want to talk to someone and get some energy. And you do have that. So you're very serving to people. And I also noticed in there, you've added a little morning routine
Yes, sir.
to help you with that.
Every single day, I can't miss, or it would drop to 1 out of 10.
And when did you start that?
Probably when I met you. My biggest struggle that I've had for the 7 years I've been with you is what we call the emotional roller coaster, whether it's life or whether it's dealing with business. When I met you, you sent me a gratitude journal. I think it was a Christmas present. And Todd, I didn't do very well with it, but I'm getting better. I'm starting to do that. And then I have my daily morning routine, which involves pretty much a half hour of just talking to my wife, which is a very good thing. If I miss that, I seem like something's off.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're all weirdos. Let's just get that out of the way. We're all a little weird. There are, so let's talk about this a little. I'll give you some stats that'll kind of blow your head, and I'll kind of talk. I want to be careful of some of these comments because they can be borderline offensive. And I want you to know, I don't mean it that way, but I want to give you some stats, and stats are dangerous because you're never sure how true they are. But according to the American Addiction Center, 38% of Americans battle with some sort of illicit drug addiction in 2017, and 74% of Americans had some level of alcohol disorder in 2017. So drug and alcohol abuse can be part of that, what's behind that is we're trying to cover something. We don't feel good, so we want to get out in a different state. That's obviously what drug and alcohol abuse is about. Bipolar disorder, depression. I read in USA Today years ago that 10% of Americans are on prescription depression medication. I don't know if that's exactly true. That was in USA Today, but whatever it is, quite a bit. It's quite a bit. That's why I say this is the pandemic. Codependents, when someone alters their behavior in order to support an unhealthy behavior of someone else or something, like pushing their emotions down. The most common example of codependence is a wife that supports the drunk husband. Again, this is my therapist told me this. I said, if I understand codependence, like 90% of people have it. And she said, yeah, more like 97. That narcissism is something that I've talked about before. That's when someone has a low degree of empathy. They have grandiose vision of themselves. They always have to win. They use a lot of fear and intimidation. So it's the only psychological disease that's not repairable. It's not fixable. They have not found a cure for that. So when you look at all these things, you're like, Todd, you're painting a pretty ugly picture. Here's my point. What do all these things have in common is that there's some sort that they're all created or reinforced by fear. And so when I say it's a pandemic, that's a big statement. My point is our happiness level and our joy level needs to increase. And there's only one person that can do it, and that's me, you, and I, right? It's just we have to do it. So that's the idea that we're talking about. And the reason I'm passionate about this is because I have worked on it myself, but I've also seen so many people work on this. Let me go to the screen. Guys, you can always find these visuals at beyourbestseries.com, beyourbestseries.com. These visuals that I reference are always in there because a lot of you guys are listening to this on audio. So let's talk about the 4 quadrants of fear. We'll talk about them for a few minutes and then switch to the quadrants of love. So first of all, under the quadrant of fear, the first thing I want to describe is that fear is the opposite of love. It's impossible for me in the moment, and I'll use a gross analogy, to hate my baby and love my baby. I either feel one way or the other. They're opposite feelings. So that's just something that I want you to know. Number two, fear allows you to be a victim and not take self-responsibility for your own happiness. Jonas, give me an example of either something that you've done or that you've seen other people do that allows people to be a victim. This is very common.
So give me an example. What are you asking of? Allow somebody to be a victim?
Well, Jonas, I can't find a job because unemployment's too high. No one wants to hire me.
Excuses.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I see it a lot, and I actually see it, unfortunately, a lot in the young generation. I don't know if it's a thing with us as parents that taught them to do this, but the absolute excuses of why they can't get simple tasks accomplished, I absolutely allows them to be a victim.
Oh, yeah. Jonas is picking up on something that's little, but as an example, he's saying that, hey, the employee says, yeah, I just couldn't get that done. Too much stuff going on. That's an excuse. If say a boss gives you a directive, if you didn't have time to complete the task or something blew up, at the very least you could do is go back to him and say, hey, I need some help here. Not sure what to do. You asked me to get this done and I had this fire come up, right? But it wouldn't be going into the meeting and saying, yeah, I just didn't get it done. The first time that happens with me, I'm like, this person's not going to make it here.
My favorite one, Todd, is when they come in and say, Jonas, I couldn't make it to work on time for the 5th day in a row. I was stuck behind the train, or I was there when they should have said I only left the house 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, yes. So you guys get it. There's lots of examples of this. People will always use fear against you to manipulate you and control you. Oh, this is a big one. Again, I'm using some gross analogies, but they're real. I was talking to a friend of mine, this is about 3 years ago, and she asked me some advice. And so I had a phone call with her, and she was saying, I want to leave my husband, but he tells me all the time I don't have a job and I will be destitute. I clearly told her, I said, your husband makes a large income. You've been married for 14 years and you will get half. And I did that so that she could get over her fear. I said, listen, you should always try and work it out. But if you're, in this case, the husband was using fear and intimidation to control her. He was playing on her fear emotions. Well, if a person doesn't have self-confidence and self-worth, this is easy to do. It's easy to manipulate. And so that's the point of that one. And that's a dirty little secret that people don't want to talk about, but that's an ugly one, right? That's an ugly one. And the last thing is, this is a hidden one. Fear feels comfortable when you're used to it. And you will also use it against yourself. So fear feels comfortable when you're used to it. And you also will use it against yourself. I will give you an example of that for me. So I told you earlier, my biggest challenge with fear is anxiety. I used to have an employee say, leave my employment, and I would take it so personal, and then I would turn it into fear and say, oh, that person left. I'll probably have 8 other resignations today or this week. That's me using fear against myself. Now, by the way, in 25 years as an entrepreneur, that's never happened. So it's not even true. It's never happened. I had no factual basis for what I just said, right? So Jonas, comments from you about any of these quadrants?
So why do we, I guess my big question for you, Todd, is why do we allow it to get comfortable? If fear is bad, why do we allow it to motivate our life?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not sure if I've got the perfect answer, but I'll take a stab for me and then you can take a stab. So where I'm going with this is our upbringing, and fear is prevalent in movies. It's prevalent in our homes. It's prevalent everywhere. So I remember one day I was a little kid and I decided to start a little fire behind against my house. Now, the house I lived in at the time was 800 square feet, 2-bedroom house. We were very poor. And I decided to, so the house is like 80 years old, right? And it's made of wood. And I decided to start a little fire with matches and a bunch of trash and started a fire against the house. My mom comes around the corner and about blows her lid. We put out the fire. She's really pissed. And take a guess at what she told me. You wait, Jonas, finish it for me. You wait until
your father gets home. That healthy fear.
Yes.
Mine's my 100-pound Jewish aunt. Believe me, I was threatened with her my whole life.
Okay, so we grow up with it is my answer. We grow up with it. I was in my room crying for 3 hours before Dad got home. I mean, I'm petrified. That was the worst of it, right? That massive fear, massive fear. So when I tell that story, that's probably something that a lot of people can relate to. So I think it's enough to just realize, guys, fear is very prevalent, extremely prevalent. And if you look at, I don't want to get political, but if you look at some of the political strife that we've had, and you look at some of the racial strife, that's fear-based, guys. There's fear behind all of that. And some people do it on purpose to control you and to get them to come to one side or the other. And instead of looking at it more logical and saying, okay, what's really going on here, right? So this is, matter of fact, let's just talk about the pandemic. My heart last year, my heart hurt just seeing people in so much fear. I mean, you go to the grocery store and there's some shelves missing, right? There's food missing. And you can't watch the news without the ticker tape saying 2 million people died, and you know, people showing all kinds of horrific stuff on the news, and on and on and on. And it's like, wow, and it builds, and it was building, and it was building. And then all of a sudden people were surprised when there was racial riots and there was people burning houses and stuff. Well, that's what happens with fear, is we do things that we wouldn't have normally done, right? People storming the White House. I mean, come on, that's a normal occurrence, right? In a normal environment, that would never happen, okay? So let's switch over to the left side. So here's, this one had a big effect on me. The past has no value, doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter what happened in the past. The present is where joy and love exist, because it's where we're at in the moment. And the future doesn't matter at all, because it hasn't happened. We're making it up. So I might be fearful of the past, but the past has no prediction on what I'm doing today. The future doesn't matter because it hasn't happened, right? It's not real. So one of the main ways, and I'm afraid this will get like skirted over and you won't understand. If I want to have more love in my life, I have to start now. It's in this moment. It's in this moment right now. It was when I woke up and I looked at the trees. That's the moment. It's not, I'll be happy when I get the house. I'll be happy when I get the promotion. That doesn't work. That's why when I said I was coaching these entrepreneurs and they're tripling their income and their happiness stays the same or goes down, because it's in the future. It doesn't matter. What matters is how we feel today, how we feel right now. And that creates our actions. So this part is very important. The second part that's on here is you can only experience one emotion at a time, and you will achieve the one you focus on most. So you can only experience fear or love, not both, in any moment. And you will always achieve the one that you focus on the most. So if we're fear-based, then we're going to focus more on fear, and that's what we will get. It will compound itself. And my story earlier was we compounded that last year. We already had a pandemic coming on that was real to some extent, and then we compounded on it. And that's why that happened, because we were getting what we already were feeling if that makes sense.
Todd, here's my big question for you, because this is why I've been excited to do this with you. You guys are working on getting me less emotional and more in love in my life. How does one move from being motivated by fear to really being in the present?
So let me, first of all, it's a great question. For me, I was never in the past. This is just me. I was always either in the present and I was a lot in the future. That was me. Okay, that was my personality. What I had to do for me was I had to focus on being more present now and experiencing those feelings that I was feeling. So for an example, my therapist, when we started working on this, she said, hey, I want you to stop 3 times a day and I want you to have an experience. And I said, what are you talking about? She says, I want you to smell the air. I want you to look in someone's eyes for 2 minutes. I want you to look at the trees. And I thought she was a total corn nut, but said, I'm super coachable. So I had to put it on my phone, 3 alarms a day. I did this for a year and it would ding off and I would stop whatever I was doing and I would have a moment. What she was trying to get me to do was to focus on the present and how did I feel? Your morning routine works because you're present. It makes you present in the morning with less fear and anxiety and more focus on loving type feelings. That's why that works. That's why you would start your day that way. That's why I start my day that way. So that's the idea. So how do you do it? You focus more on love every single moment. Give an example. Was talking to a friend last night and her 12-year-old pit bull, who she dearly loves, is dying. Diarrhea, vomiting, can't sleep at night, everything. And she says, I said, are you going to put him down? She says, she kept saying, I can't. And I said, let me stop for a second. I said, how much do you love that dog? And she said, Todd, she told me 12 years of stories condensed, on how she was a puppy and she was there with the birth of her daughter and just, on and on and on. And I said, keep that. That's what you focus on. Not the loss, not the fear of loss, which is a big driver. The fear of love, or excuse me, the feeling of love. I said at one point, I said, would you rather have the 12 or 13 years you had with this dog and go through some pain? Or would you rather erase all those memories, all those loving memories? And she said, well, I would rather have her. And I said, that's your answer. So it's you get what you focus on. I believe that's the answer. And it works for me. It's like, if it's like Jonas, if I, my best example is at the golf club. So I have these guys at the golf club and I get to know different guys. If they're negative, I'm out.
Yep.
If they seem loving, cordial, nice, interested, fun, I try and befriend them. Hey, what's your cell number? Let's stay in touch, right? And that's how I view it. I view who I hang around as super important. So like when I talk to you, now it's okay. We have some conflict and we have conflict conversations, but it's always a place of love and appreciation and care for each other.
My uncle's favorite saying when it comes to that is, just because I disagree doesn't mean I disapprove. And I literally have that written up on my wall to remind myself.
Love that. Love that. Just because I disagree doesn't mean I disapprove. In other words, I don't love you less.
Yeah.
Now, there are some people, Jonas, I can get in an argument, healthy argument, and they hate me. Now, that can happen, right?
Absolutely.
Now, if I didn't cuss at them and I didn't belittle them and we're just, say we're having a discussion and I didn't do anything like that, and they're acting like, well, if you believe this way, I'm out. I've had friends, I had a friend tell me that because of the political stuff last year, 3 of her friends, she doesn't have them anymore.
And I just said,
I said, that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who wants, I mean, wow, really? I mean, if put it this way, let's say I tend to be non-political, but let's say I was a staunch Republican, you were a staunch Democrat. Well, our friend Scott Oliver is that way. He's staunch Democrat. I'm not as on one side as him. I'm more in the middle. But we have some healthy conversations. I still love him. Think I don't even necessarily think he's wrong many of the times. We're just having a healthy discussion. So that's more on the loving side. You know, when you say, well, Todd, how would I know if someone lives in fear? How can I tell? You can feel it. If you pay attention, you can feel it. I was last week on vacation in Florida, and I knew one guy there's 4 guys. One guy I knew really well. Another guy is a business partner of mine, but I don't know him that well. And a third guy, never met him. We had dinner the first night, all of us, when we got there. We got to the end of dinner. We're walking out. His name's Mike. I said, Mike, we're going to be lifelong friends. And he says, gosh, I appreciate that, but why do you say that? I said, because you're a quality person. And he is. It's just, I could tell 2 hours of conversation. He's like, how much he loves his girlfriend, what he does to help the community. He's super smart, builds skyscrapers. I mean, I just dug him. I just liked him. No negative, nothing. We were together for a week. No negative energy whatsoever. Nothing that gave me the heebie-jeebies. He didn't look at me weird. He was very transparent. He was a good communicator. He got kind of mad when I beat him in fishing, but that's just guy stuff. So anyway, I look at people like that, like I'm in the moment, like, hey, is this a person I want to wrap my arms around and give a big hug and show some love to, and I want to help them? Or is this a person that is like, there's some weird feeling that I get from them? So people sometimes call that, there's a term for that. Not a clairvoyant, but you pick up on people's emotions and feelings.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'll help you guys out. Everyone has that. It's whether you listen to it or not. Do you listen to it or not? I can meet someone for 10 minutes. I'm never wrong. Ask a few questions, watch how they observe them. I know if they're a good person or not. So the next thing on here says, suffering creates our character and allows us to see the goodness in life. Whew. That's a big one. This is something I struggled with a lot. So let me read it again. Suffering creates our character and allows us to see the goodness in life. So, Jonas, do you mind if I ask you about your son? Actually, can you tell that story? Remember you called me one day, I don't know, it's a year and a half ago.
So I wondered if this was going to come up. Somebody called me the other day and said, Jonas, I'm sure you get job offers all the time. My answer is yes. And they say, why do you stay? And I said, he called my son. That's how I answer all the time. So for those of you that don't know, and I asked my son if I could tell this story, and he said yes. My son threatened to commit suicide. And probably, I think my business partner was the one that shared with Todd, and I am dealing with my stuff. And all of a sudden my cell phone rings from Todd. I hope I can keep this together now, from you. And I was stunned that you were calling, and you asked if you could talk to my son. And I was amazed that somebody like you would want to call and talk to my son, but you spent about a half an hour on the phone with them. And not sure exactly what you said, nor did you share, but my wife and I are eternally grateful. And my answer is always, am I ever going to go anywhere? And my answer is real simple. No, he called my son.
Well, I appreciate that, but I get me out there yet.
And he's doing very well right now. I just saw him here last weekend and he's doing great.
Yeah, I got your picture. He physically looks different.
Yes, sir.
Physically looks different. So his son was going through a hard time, but since then he's gotten a great job. He calls me, I don't know, a few months ago, we have a good talk about sales, and then he wanted me to talk to his boss for a few minutes, and that's fun thing. So when you do things like that, like I accept the role of being a leader, and it's okay to reach out to people. I had one of my best friends from 8th grade. He calls me on last Sunday, and I had just gotten home from Florida the night before, and it's Mother's Day. But I love talking to my buddy. And he tells me that his brother, who I also grew up with, he's a younger brother, is having some suicidal thoughts. And so I reached out to him and I texted him and I said, hey, bud, I hadn't talked to him, his brother, for 30 years. But long story short, he had 3 car crashes. He's in major pain, severe physical pain. And so I've been texting with him all week. And I tell him, I said, bud, I don't know what the lesson is. And I don't know how this will serve your life today. And I know it doesn't feel that way. But I want you to trust me that there's goodness out of this. I don't know what that is. And that's what this is saying. This is about, if we think about it like this, if we were in heaven and there was no pain at all, then we wouldn't ever experience what it is to achieve. We wouldn't ever, my son, I can brag about this for just a second. I watched the best basketball game last night of my life. My son is a freshman in high school and he plays freshman basketball. He's 6'5", 270 pounds. He's a beast. They're playing they're the 2 best teams in the league. They go to triple overtime. The other team, 2 3-point in the air buzzer beaters twice to send it to triple overtime. Our team ends up winning by like 1 basket. It's a 2-hour basketball game. It was the best. And so the subplot to that story is 2 months ago, my son comes to me and says, Dad, we're driving somewhere. He says, I don't think I'm going to go out for the high school team. And I said, son, you're 6'5", 270 pounds and you love basketball. I said, I'm only going to say this once, but you have no idea what's going to come from that experience. You're entering some of the best years of your life that you will always remember. So we're driving home last night. They're undefeated. They had this great game. And I said, son, are you glad you joined the team and you went out for basketball now? And he says, Dad, that was one of the best sports experiences I've ever had in my life. The suffering that we go through allows us to experience the greatness. And so when the dog dies and grandmother dies and there's tragic accidents, these things create who we are. And no one told me I was in heaven yet, right? No one told me that. So we're not. Does that make sense?
You know, you talked about the pandemic and you talked about people suffering and their job loss, Todd. How do we as people, no matter which scope we're on, how do we remind people of your message that you're sharing, that whatever you're suffering through, all you're going to do is gain from it later? I try so hard to remind people, get through it, stay strong, stay diligent. You're going to have so many lessons and so much growth through it. How can we share that with people that feel like, God is against me and the world is just hating on me right now?
So let me answer your question with a role play. You ready? This is
Absolutely.
role play number one. This is role play number one. Jonas and I are friends. He just lost his job. So Jonas, tell me again, you just lost your job of 16 years?
Yes, sir.
They shut down the company over the pandemic?
Yes, they did.
Oh my God. You must feel really horrible. That's all you've ever done.
I'm angry. I have no idea what I'm going to do, Todd. The bills are due, and the kid, we just signed him up for that school.
The government needs to do something about this stuff. This is kind of ridiculous. I mean, gosh, there should be some way that you could get some money or something. I don't see him doing anything. And
I don't
frankly,
see him doing anything either.
I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you're not that smart. You're probably not going to find a better job.
I have no idea what I'm going to do.
That's role play number one. What I want you to get is I'm commiserating with him. I'm bringing him down a little bit, right? This is role play number two. So Jonas, let me get this straight. You just got laid off today and your company's shutting down after 16 years with them?
Just got the pink slip.
Wow. How do you feel, bud?
Oh, I'm brokenhearted, Todd. I have no idea what I'm going to do.
Wow. I'm not sure if I know what to do, but I'll tell you this. We're going to figure this out. Why don't I come over tomorrow night? I got a guy that helps a lot with career pathing. Why don't I bring him with me and let's just brainstorm this and let's figure it out? Because what I'm telling you, and I know this may not seem this way right now, but you probably can find a better job doing something that pays you more money that you enjoy even more. We just got to find it.
That sounds great.
What's the difference to those two role plays?
Man, I want to talk to number 2 all day long. He made me feel so much better about the world.
Yeah. No, in short version, number 2 came from love. Number 1 came from fear and commiseration and yeah, the world sucks. So I think the answer to your question is, for me, a lot of it's who you hang around. A lot of this is who you hang around.
Absolutely.
Now, what some people are thinking is, Todd, a lot of my friends that way. My spouse is that way. Okay, we'll figure it out. My advice is don't buy into it. You know, and listen, you know, sometimes you got to fire some friends, you got to fire some family. I know that sounds mean. I won't do it. I've got family members I don't talk to. It doesn't embarrass me to say that. It used to embarrass me. Doesn't embarrass me. I've got a family member that's bipolar, has anger issues. Nope. Lives in the same town. Nope. Now, if I see him at a family function every once in a while, I'm nice to him, I'm cordial to him, but there's no relationship there. I can't, the crazy bipolarness and the anger issues, and that's a very, very fear-based person. I am not befriending them, even if they're family.
Todd, I don't hide that I haven't spoke to my dad, and gosh, it must be over 6 to 10 years now. And people have tried to fix it. People have tried, oh, you need to fix this. And I don't have any problems at all telling people, look, him and I don't see eye to eye. There are things that he brought to the table that affect my emotions, and my emotions go down. So why put myself in that position anymore? He's happy, healthy, and whole where he's at. I'm doing great where I'm at, and there's no reason for us to try to fix it and create problems in each other's life. And I'm completely okay with that.
Yeah. Listen, honestly, that's a healthy outlook. I don't know, like a professional therapist would say that. I think they would, because here's the problem. You control you. I don't control other people, nor do I try to. What I try and do is attract people into my life and hold on to people that have a good heart, that come from a place of love and care, that are loving people, that are growth minded. Those are things that I look for. And if they don't have those traits, I think it's fair and okay to say, this is my life and this is where I choose to spend my time. I think that's totally appropriate. And some people don't think so. And I've gotten arguments about people about this. Now, that doesn't mean, let me give an example. That doesn't mean that, like my family member that I referenced earlier that has anger issues and is bipolar, if he really was down on his luck, that I couldn't give him money or I couldn't help him. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't choose to spend my time there, right? So I can still be loving to him if some big need arises, but I don't need to have the negativity and confusion in my life. So number 4, this is a big one. So it says the 4 motivators of people. I want you guys to listen to this. Number 1 is fear. That's what we're talking about. Fear of sickness, loss, poverty, death. Those are all fears. Number 2 is desire, success, wealth, pleasure. Number 3 is duty, which means motivated by gratitude and responsibility. Think of a soldier, right? Hey, I'm going to storm the whole hill and probably get killed for my country. That's a sense of duty. Love, compelled to care and love for others. So I'm going to ask you to rank those for you, Jonas, in the area that you live, like how you live day to day. Does fear come first? Does desire come first? Duty or love? I will go first because I want to compel people that when you work on these things, it can really turn around. So here's my number 10 years ago. fear, desire, duty, love. 10 years ago. Fear, desire, duty, love. Love was actually fourth, last on my list, which is sad. And fear was first. Okay. Now, just to frame this up to you guys, 10 years ago, I still had a great life. I don't suffer from sickness. I had great kids back then. I had a great wife back then, like very successful businesses. And I had that. Now, today, duty comes for me. If I'm being really honest with myself, duty comes first. Love second, desire third, and fear last. Now, my goal, just so you know what I'm working on, is to make love first. It'll probably take me another year or two to really be in the habit of living every day of my life that way. That's what I think. But that's the big thing that I'm working on. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this discussion. So that's a big change, right? Big change. All those things got reordered. Okay. So when you look at your how you live your everyday life, not just in business, but at home with friends, all that, how would you rank yours currently?
I have desire first. Unfortunately, you know the chip on my shoulder and you know my drive. I can't figure out how to turn it off yet. Love is two. I have to laugh all day. I have to take care of people. I have to see the good in people. And sometimes I see that as a detriment. That's a problem. Three is definitely fear. I am afraid of losing this all. And then four is duty. And to be completely honest, Todd, I don't have much duty in my life. So four is a very low four.
Interesting. So we would all probably rank these a little bit different. How would you what order would you like them to be in?
My greatest story ever is about a rich man that when he was on his deathbed, the nurses asked him to just give one piece of advice to the world before he died. And the gentleman said, stop and smell more roses. Nothing about money, nothing about career, nothing about anymore. Stop and smell more roses. If I could re-rank them, man, I would love to love, like put all the rest of them so far down, but love would be one. Strangely enough, fear would be two, because it still is my motivating factor. I motivate myself by what happens if this is gone. And then I would like to figure out duty so I could get that desire all the way to four, because I have this strange desire to want to own the world. And I would really like to put that away and just be happy with what I have. And that's the part I'm trying to figure out about me now, Todd. I've been blessed with so many wonderful things, a wonderful wife, wonderful child, wonderful job, incredible employees and friends. Why can't I just be happy? And that's what I'm working on.
Yeah. Yeah. Really good digging deep on that stuff. I'll tell you guys a story, how this relates. So my dad was a pretty successful entrepreneur and he had clients on the East Coast. And I woke up and I would be eating my Cheerios or my Lucky Charms and I'm listening to him sell on the phone. So after I'm about 16, I start working for him. By the time I'm 17, I'm managing one of his companies. I'm a manager. And I was, it wasn't because I'm his son, I was really good at it. And our talk around the dinner table would be this. This was very common. I'd be like, hey, Dad, there was two companies. And I would say, hey, how's the other company doing that I'm not involved? How's the other company? He says, oh, it's the best. We just had our best month ever. We sold more equipment than we ever have in our life. And now watch, this is what he said next. But son, next month doesn't look good at all.
Yep.
And I may have to lay some people off. So here's what I want. Here's how embedded fear is. We went from the best month ever, which is a fact, right? Best revenue or net income month ever in the business, to foreshadowing a horrible month the next month, which, by the way, hardly ever happened.
Yep.
I mean, I think I remember, this is hard. I mean, you've been in business 40 years, maybe done layoffs twice. in his career. 1, 2, 3 people, So what he was doing and what I learned to do, and probably what you learned to do, is motivate ourselves through fear.
Yes, sir.
Instead of what I want people to do and what I've learned to do is to motivate myself through love. So what would that look like? That would look like, hey, yeah, we just had our best month ever. I'm very excited. And we're going to have to brainstorm about next month because, gosh, we got to get a little creative. It doesn't look so good. That would be a different spin, right? Or, hey, we had just had our best month ever, but we had a big account leave. So I got to replace that big account. So I've got to just spend 5 hours a day the next week making some calls and getting a big account. Talking about it more tactfully instead of emotionally. Sure. Here's exactly what we've got to do in order to fix this problem. But most people go to the fear, the anxiety, the blame. That's where they go emotionally, instead of to the positive, to the love side. And it's very odd. And I used to think, Jonas, just so you know, I used to think if I lost that fear, I would lose my edge.
That's exactly how I feel.
Oh, yes. You know what I found? I would say that in the last couple of years, my happiness level went from a 6 to a 8.5.
Really?
Yeah. And I have less fear and anxiety than I've ever had in my life. So I'm happier and my results are the best they've ever been. So I've actually disproved my own theory, right? So it's interesting when we look at all this stuff, guys. It's a big subject. This may be one of those things where you want to replay it a couple times, watch it with your spouse, send this to 2 or 3 friends that live in fear, or 10, I don't care, right? Why do I do all this? I want to dedicate my life, how I show love is one way of saying it, is by doing things like this, helping people. And that's really what's at the core of all this. I was trying to set up a call with getting Ed Milet on one of my podcasts. So I was talking to his assistant and he's like, Todd, why are you doing this? I said, same reason Ed does his. He says, well, Ed does it just because he loves to help people. I said, that's why I'm doing it, right? Who knows? This may shift someone. I may never know them, but they heard Jonas's story and they're like, wow, I'm gonna work on this, and they're gonna put this visual up on their fridge, and they're gonna work on this stuff, and they're gonna start the daily gratitude journal. They're gonna start doing that, so they diminish the fear and they start getting into the love column. They start helping people without expecting anything in return. They start donating some time to the children's home. This is the kind of stuff that we want to get out there because it's a different experience in life, and we're all gonna die someday. Like, we're going to die. Let's make it count. Jonas and I were just on another call and I was telling him, take the lid off. There's a great country song called If You Could Have Seen It in Color. And the song is about, I know you're looking at black and white pictures, but you should have lived my life. Yeah, I saw it in color. I lived life. And that's what this is about. You cannot live life in fear. That's not where the happy point is. And that's where most people are living it. So Jonas, give me some closing comments on this subject, and then I'll close this out.
Man, if I could just tell everybody, I'm working on it. Todd knows that I'm definitely a broken person. I have learned just my life to motivate myself by fear. I am going to work on the next 20 years of just stopping and smelling more roses and starting to love a lot more and see if I can change those numbers.
Yeah, and trigger it.
Okay.
Look for the triggers. So like my trigger was, when something bad would happen, I would focus on that for 3 hours. Forget about the other 5 things that happened that morning that were great.
I do that all the time.
Oh, so we're more similar than we think.
Absolutely. I could have an absolutely awesome day and all of a sudden something goes wrong with one loan, or a realtor's upset, or my kid had an issue, and
yeah.
I use that word that you use all the time, say it because I always screw it up, catastrophizing.
Catastrophication.
I am using that word so much when I talk to my son and to my wife because I'm trying to explain what I do internally.
Yeah. I think the big thing that you're doing, Jonas, is you're so open and transparent in talking about it. recognition is the key to fixing, right? If you don't think, if you're listening to this podcast and you get off and say, yes, I definitely have more fear than love, work on it, talk about it, put this visual up on your fridge, put it up on your bathroom mirror, focus on it a little bit every day. You're not going to be 40, 50, 30 years old and change your way of thinking, how you've thought your whole adult life and as a child overnight. It ain't going to happen. But if we want to live a better life, we got to do that. 2 more comments. Number 1, we are a mortgage company. So if you're getting this and you need to buy a house, or you know of 3 renters, whoever sent you this, which is usually one of our great salespeople, email them back, give us a referral. That's how we get our business. We're not on national television and all that. We do it by all the hundreds of thousands of past clients that we have. They send us business and return to us and get referrals from great people like yourself. So thank you for that. Last one is a story. I love this story, and it sums up all of this stuff. It says, this is a fable. An elder tells his grandson, every choice in life is a battle between 2 wolves inside each of us. One represents anger, envy, greed, fear, lies, insecurity, and ego. The other represents peace, love, compassion, kindness, humility, positivity, and they are both competing for supremacy. The grandson asks, which wolf wins? And the grandfather says, the one you feed. So feed yourself with that positivity, that love. Diminish the bad wolf. Because how I've used this analogy before I read this, I would say, yeah, there's 2 little guys on my shoulder. They're about 4 inches tall. And don't ask me why, but mine were always little naked men. And they were green. And they had little horns in their head. And they're always competing. This is the good guy. This is the bad guy. And what this fable is talking about is the one that you pay attention to, the one that you feed is the one that's who you're going to be. That's who you're going to be. So choose the good guy. Choose the positive person. Choose to hang around the positive friends. That's what this is all about. So I know this is kind of touchy-feely. Maybe it's a little different. Maybe you've thought about this a lot. Maybe this is a new subject. But if it struck you and it got you thinking about it, use it. Do something about it. My advice is put this visual up somewhere where you can watch it, where you can look at it. Listen to the podcast 2 or 3 times. Listen to it with your spouse. Listen to it with a loved one. Listen to it with your kids. And just use it as a point of discussion. But it can't be a one-time experience, or you're not going to make any steps towards fixing it, because we're trying to get rid of years and years and years of negative habits. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Jonas, thank you so much. You're awesome. Thanks for your transparency in all this. You're a beautiful man. And I have no doubt in my mind, you're going to conquer all of this stuff.
Absolutely honored, brother. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, bud. Guys, go out and make it a great day. Bye, guys. I just want to invest in people that really want to be the best that they can be.